SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Aaron Smith was working overseas as a personal trainer and sports scientist when he discovered dynamic Pilates in London and immediately knew he wanted to bring the style back to Australia. Just 13 years later, his KX Pilates brand has grown to 109 studios across 6 countries. With no formal business training, he says it was gut instinct and tenacity that propelled his first business into an industry disruptor. Aaron starts by describing how he first discovered dynamic Pilates to Jeff Waters.
Look, I was an avid traveller growing up. I was in America for a couple of years and then over in London just under 3 years when I stumbled across an ad for dynamic Pilates. It was a new style of fitness that I'd never seen before. It had just come out to London from LA. It was the first studio there and I immediately fell in love with the style of fitness. So physiotherapy back in Australia was using Pilates as a means to extend the value of their client and also to assist in rehabilitation. But Pilates and fitness was really only seen in gyms like mat Pilates, which was quite boring and dull. And after a couple of weeks, you got over it.
You mentioned the term dynamic Pilates. For the audience that doesn't know what that is, what is it?
So dynamic, or like we call it high intensity or high performance Pilates, KX is a 50-minute workout. So our studios are quite small and boutique. We teach anywhere between 12 and 14 clients per class. So it's a 50-minute full body workout. Specific to KX, we have our customised Reformer machines that are exclusive to KX Pilates studios. We work with the number one manufacturer of balanced body in the world, and we've produced these machines to really amplify the KX experience and the KX workout. So we sequence our workout and our exercises, so it's minimal rest. We go from a lower body to an upper body pretty quickly, so 50 minutes you're working pretty hard.
And could you please explain to me what this machine looks like that you're talking about?
So the Reformer machine, it's an apparatus. The Reformer bed is sometimes also referred to as, but it's basically a spring and pulley system. So it's a machine that we start our classes lying down on. So you're on your back in a traditional sequence of your feet on the foot bar. You've got straps for your hands and your legs, and then the carriage moves back and forth under spring resistance. So depending what exercise we're doing, we can add more springs to make the exercise harder, or again, the flip side, we can also decrease the spring load to then make our bodies work harder as well and make our core work as well. So Pilates is all about core work, but in specific to KX as well and Reformer Pilates, you can have a full body workout where your core is challenged the entire time. So you might do similar exercises that you would see in a gym, like a chest press or a lunge or a squat, but with the Reformer machine and the specific positions that your body are placed in, your core and your body is then challenged for balance, coordination, and also for core stabilisation as well.
So you saw this at first in London, and what did you do from there? How did you take it?
Yeah, so in London I walked into a studio. It was very, very small. We only taught 6 people at the time, and I just fell in love with it. The music was pumping, the clientele were already health and fitness conscious, and it was just a really great vibe. We were getting a lot of attention from media as well at the time because Pilates, apart from the rehabilitation side I mentioned, it was quite illustrious and it was for the elite back then in the London days. So to bring a style of fitness out for the masses was very, very different. And Pilates is also, the teachings is traditionally very black and white. And if you're not doing it right, you're doing it wrong. And because we speed up the movements to make it into more of a workout, we were considered the rebels of the Pilates world, which also kind of fitted in with my personality as well, because I've always liked to do things a little bit different. So fell in love with it. An Aussie guy opened the doors who was the head trainer there. We got along really, really well and he trained me up, but little did I know that he was about to go out and open his own brand of dynamic Pilates. And by the time I'd left London, there were 5 companies and 15 studios. They were all our trainers basically who went out and started their own thing because our boss at the time didn't want any business partners or wasn't ready to expand with trainers or clients. So I learned a lot of things about what not to do in business in my time in London as well. So it was a great experience for me.
Well, the clientele have taken to this pretty quickly as well, to this new idea for Pilates. They've flooded to your studios. You started in 2010 here in Australia, and now how many places do you have?
Yeah, so we have 109 studios and growing globally. So a majority is in Australia. We're just about to hit the 100th studio next Saturday in Australia. That's across 6 countries now, spoken in 3 languages, which is we're really proud of our success.
Aaron, that's extraordinary growth. How have you managed that?
Yeah, so it all started back. I mean, it was very, very difficult at the start. As I said, Pilates in the fitness world was pretty unheard of. Boutique fitness was not really around back in 2010. The fitness industry was really dominated by the big box gyms, and also 24/7 fitness was really popular back then, where people were paying $12 a week for unlimited access to 24-hour gyms. So it was very hard to compete with a $30 a class offering. But that was just education. So I think at the end of the day, people, they want to be known as a person. They don't want to be known as a number. And small boutique fitness, especially in class scenarios, have been a huge hit over the past, 10 years. So the first couple of years was a massive grind. The education of what is Pilates, what is fitness Pilates, how is KX Pilates different. I opened my second studio in 2011 to kind of show everyone that we were growing.
So is it just word of mouth? How did you promote this whole new concept to the public?
A lot of it was word of mouth and still is. Our word of mouth is about 65% of our marketing. But back in the day, I had no idea about business whatsoever when I opened my studio. So absolutely no one walked through the doors of my first day, which was pretty funny. And then I knew that I had to get working. So I did absolutely everything I possibly could to market the studio.
Build it and they will come, and it didn't work.
Correct. But what I did know was that I was a very good trainer and I was a very good relationships person. And I knew that if a client came into the studio, I could give them an exceptional experience, and then they would love it, go and tell their friends, and then bring them back. And slowly but surely, it happened. For instance, our studios make anywhere between $45,000 and $47,000 in revenue per month. My first 3 months in business was $6,500. So it was an absolute grind back in the day. But after about 12 months of really grinding it out, we started getting some traction. And also the group buying platform back in 2011 was in boom. So we did a few deals with the Jump-On-Its and the Scoop-Ons and those sort of brands that had massive databases, pushed the brand messaging out, which we doubled our revenue in 2011 for that studio in 1 month. And then I feel like that was a big turning point for our business. So I opened Studio 2 in 2011. A trainer came to me wanting to get involved, and I knew from my London days, make sure you get them involved and not push them away. So we opened Studio 3, 4 and 5 together in the following year. And then I started franchising the brand in 2013. And the rest is history. I say 2014, myself and my wife moved to Sydney to open the flagship up there. So we moved up to prove that we were going to do whatever it took to help grow the brand. And with us followed 3 of my franchise partners in Melbourne to grab the blue chip locations in Sydney. And that really helped grow the Sydney locations as well.
Okay, we've got to help out the other small business. Well, you're not a small business anymore, but there are other small business people listening who are thinking, oh my word, how can I achieve growth like that? It can't all be word of mouth. So could you please just elaborate a little bit on what you did outside of that 65%?
Yeah, so back in the day, we had no paid social media back then. So, I did everything I possibly could, which was local newspaper, flyer drops. But probably the biggest thing and we even still do this now, is the strategic partnerships within local businesses in the area. So go to your local cafes and make relationships. Go to your local barber or hairdresser, because they're going to talk to everyone that comes in the door. I used to walk into businesses and go, can I please see the owner of the business, and just compliment them on their business and just either purchase something from them or just chat to them about, hey, how can I bring my clients into your store to make you more successful? I always wanted to push the success back on them, because I knew that once again, if they liked me, if they were happy with what I was doing for them, they would naturally talk about me, and it was a success. I also gave out a lot of free classes. So a lot of people didn't know what we were. So, every single small business on Glenferrie Road in Melbourne, they got 5 free sessions, and there's a lot of businesses, and that's converted into a lot of really, really good clients. Obviously retail staff don't have a whole lot of money, but in that area as well, very affluent area, obviously their parents, they were bringing the flyers home to and the classes to. So from that, they used to come in with their mum. Mum and daughters was really, really popular. So it just slowly grew from there.
And you're talking about people who do a lot of talking with other people.
Correct. And then once again, the group buying platform that we discussed earlier was fantastic for me because that was a great way of marketing my business because my studio wasn't full at the time. And I paid my trainer the same amount, or myself, which I was paying myself $200 a week. So I was basically working for free. But whether there was 2 people in a class or 12 people in a class, the trainer would get paid the same amount. So if I could use this buying platform to push out my name and push out classes on the cheap, people would come in, fill those classes up, have a great experience, and once again go and tell their friends. And it was back in the day where we had no competitors. So they couldn't go somewhere else to have the same experience in Reformer Pilates that we were providing. Where fast forward now, it's an extremely competitive market, probably the most popular fitness.
Briefly expand on the joint buying platform for us?
Yeah, sure. So Jump On It and Scoop On, they were doing deals like 5 sessions for $29. So their databases were up to 100,000 people in Melbourne. So they had the numbers to drive the traffic and get my logo and the messaging out for my brand. I would only receive back then about $9 of the $29. So obviously it burnt me on the back end, but enabled to push the people into my studio to create that exceptional experience.
And then they met you and they got charmed.
Correct.
Addicted to your product.
Exactly. The schmoozing happened. As we say at KX, they come for the workout, but they stay because they feel like they belong to something. They belong to a community. You know, I spent a long time in my previous work in America and Australia and really focusing on getting people to warm and like to me quickly and asking the right questions and listening, where it's very, very different in the fitness world. A lot of people like talking about themselves. So that really helped me. It didn't help all the businesses. There are a lot of businesses that went out of business because of the group buying platform, because if they were substituting, say, a hairdresser, they dropped their price from, say, $100 to $30. Then obviously they just couldn't make any money. But with me, I had spaces in my classes. So to put people in those classes that were, in between 25 and 50, majority female, my perfect demographic, it worked hugely. And then fast forward a couple of months after that is when Facebook launched their paid advertising. So instead of going through these platforms, I still did the same deals via Facebook, $29 for 5 sessions. And instead of getting $9, I got all the money. And then it went from there. So that was our opening campaign. And then now fast forward, we still do something very similar even now. We push out on all of our social media platforms. And obviously we can geo-target and target the demographics exactly what we want. And our studios now, we're doing pre-sales of anywhere between 500 and 1,000 packs and clients before the doors are even open. So studios are full the first month of business, which is incredible.
Well, it is. You've described an extraordinary business, and congratulations there. You started off by saying that you didn't have any experience or any knowledge of business, and yet you've created this, and now you're running a franchising business as well. What have you learned along the way that you can share with us?
Yeah, there's been many expensive lessons. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot of the history of the last 10 years of franchising. So I started franchising in 2013. We had sold our first 3 franchises. I moved to Sydney to launch the first studio in Sydney with my wife, Andy, in 2014. And then we started growing from there. So I remember 15, 16 was a huge year. We went from 17 studios to late 30s. I think we opened 17 studios in 17 months. It was huge. And also we opened in Adelaide and Perth at the time. Brisbane wasn't far behind. And Canberra was a few years later. So that was my trainers moving from Melbourne, some of my exceptional trainers, and opening up their own studios in their own states and really taking control of, again, the blue chip locations. Being first estate, obviously were well incentivized as well to do so. But there was probably a time in 2000, I had my first son in 2015, my daughter in 2017. And it was around that time I realized that I had loved growing the franchise and being the founder of a franchise, but it was a time when I looked at what I was really strong at and what I wasn't, and the management and growth of a franchise at that stage was something that I wasn't really too fond of anymore. So the hunt was on for a CEO to take over my role. I tried for 9 months with a COO that didn't work out, unfortunately, but I learned a lot of lessons from that in terms of the wrong culture fit. But then I found our current CEO, Selena Bridge, who was a very good friend of my wife's in a previous work environment, and she's been incredible. She's been 5 years last Saturday leading the charge on the day-to-day operations of the business, and I get to do what I love doing, which is what I say, sprinkle the founder's dust. I go to studio openings. I still see the amazing faces on our franchise partners' face of their dreams of opening up a studio. and being successful, and the international stuff is really exciting, and the innovation of the business is really exciting. So definitely a form of exiting, hiring a CEO, I found, with all the upside.
That's Aaron Smith, founder of KX Pilates. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel.